Okay, so I will be recording on Thursday as well. Now, Thursday, I'm hoping if everything works out, you know, technology and everything else, I was going to have a guest in, a former student who's just going to tell a little bit of her story when it comes to, you know, this is what happened to me when, or this is what I was able to do, like as soon as I got my associate's degree. This is how an internship kind of helped me, you know, with job placement, you know, things like that. So she's just going to give a little bit of her story, and if that works out, you know, I'll have that on Thursday. Now again, I'm going to record that, but if that's something where, hey, you're sitting and you're saying, hey, I'd like to ask that person some questions, then, you know, by all means, feel free to join us. Okay. So is there anything else? Any other questions? Literature assignment, anything? Everybody's like on track. Everybody knows what they're writing about.
No, I'm gonna be honest, it's been a bad week and weekend, so I don't really know like where I'm at on anything.
Don't know where you're at. Okay, so I'll tell you what we'll do. If you don't know where you're at, like even like picking a topic and stuff, we got some other people that have, right? Everybody's like, right? I can't even tell if you raise your hands. What am I doing? But I think, you know, Brooke's got her hand raised, kind of, right? No, right. So if you're good with it, what we'll do is this. I'll go through the material, and then after that, I'll talk a little bit more in depth about the literature assignment with people, kind of get more specific to, you know, what you're wanting to do, if you want to bounce some ideas off or something like that. So we can get kind of specific like that. And in that way, if you've got everything down and you're like, hey, I am totally cool, I've got my plan and everything else, and you want to hop off, then cool. What we'll do basically is, you know, whoever stays on to talk about the literature assignment, we'll just use that time to talk real specifically about your own situation. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And that way you can get out of class a little early if you want, right? I know that produces smiles, right? So, all right.
Are you talking about today?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, you kind of cut in and out, and I just had to make sure that's what I heard.
Yes, we have had e-learning and everything else going on. So my internet's been fun.
I can't even get my kids' stuff submitted. And I'm still like, I messaged his teacher and I'm like, hey, he did all of this, but it's not letting me turn it in.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
My kids haven't come down, so I'm assuming they're fine.
That's what they want you to think. They're all lulling you into this false sense of security, right? So, so let's go over a little bit on gerontology, because this is actually a really important topic. And with this, it kind of helps to go over some of the numbers a little bit, and then looking at it from an individual perspective, society perspective, some things like that. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Yeah. So first of all, your book talks a little bit about this, but I went ahead and got the latest stats on everything. When it comes to the graying of America, that refers to the fact that, hey, Americans are getting older. And so these are the projected numbers, that 54 million will be over age 65 in 2019. And then 85 and over population, that will increase by 129% by 2040. And this is because, hey, we're living longer. So with this, there's going to be a lot more elderly out there. Now, here's the big thing about that is that that 85 and over population, when it says increase by 129%, that's like 129% from now. from I think the time that no, I think your book's 2018, but 2016 there were 6.4 million. So what it means is that it's going to more than double by 2040, and that increase is 129%, from like right now. So that population is really going nowhere but up. So the big question is, how, what does this mean for human services? Anybody got any ideas on that?
More people needing help with Social Security.
Yeah.
Possibly more, you might see more an increase in Alzheimer's and dementia.
Mm-hmm.
Needing assistance living.
That's right. So I want you, so please pay attention to this. The biggest thing that it means for human services is more jobs. And that is that this area over the next 10 years is projected to like be the main growth area for human services. I mean, this and addictions. And there's going to be a lot of jobs in there that that some people in human services hadn't thought of before. So it's not just having the advocate, but being licensed as an activity director, which is also means that you're going to have to pull in some more knowledge on things like nutrition and some general health. And some of these things are being incorporated now into other areas, such as addiction and recovery. I actually have one internship where the intern assists a social worker in not only research on nutrition and recovery, but also works with certain populations, focusing on nutrition and wellness and how it relates to recovery. So that whole aspect is going to be brought in. And like I said, it means that there's going to be more jobs available in the human services field in this area. Now, one thing to keep in mind is some of the problems that are associated with old age. And Amy did mention something like the increase in Alzheimer's and some things of that nature. So let me hear, what are some problems that people encounter in old age? Yes, I just love this commercial. I think it's like an icon in American culture now, isn't it? So, I mean, it is the thing. So tell me, what are some problems that people will encounter in old age?
Not able to clean their house, cook for themselves, drive themselves places, possibly even trouble remembering their doctor's appointments, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's correct. And all of these things are areas where human services can come in, because human services basically addresses needs that people have when they can't basically meet their own needs. So human services will be addressing all of that, and those are some of the problems that people will encounter. Now, developmentally, there's a couple of big things to keep in mind, and some of this is just like common sense, but it's like when you start, it's common sense now, but when when you're dealing with the population, it's good to like have it at the forefront of your head. So number one is that introspection increases with age. And this is talked about a little bit in your book, but this is actually a huge thing. And so when you interact with the elderly, one of the big things is that, you set the tone by your words and your action. You don't want to talk down or be patronizing or anything like that, but the introspection part, you want to be able to incorporate that into your activity and actions with them. So let me put something out there. It's becoming more introspective. And does everybody know what that means? Kind of reflecting on oneself, on one's life, one's past, just looking inward a bit more. Is becoming more introspective as you age. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It can be both.
Both? Okay. So why would you say it's both?
Because, I mean, it helps you kind of remember your pasts and all that you've done. But at the same time, if you had a lot of bad memories, it's going to make you have a bunch of bad memories as you get older.
Right, because if I've done a bunch of bad things, I mean, why would I want to revisit that? Or if I've had bad things happen to me, I mean, why would I want to revisit that?
Mm-hmm.
One reason is that working through trauma, working through some bad memories and stuff is a very good thing, and this can happen across a wide range of people. From it doesn't have to be veterans; it could be anyone. Actually, I remember one gentleman. He was a really he was a really good friend of mine. We developed a friendship over time, but he and I used sort of a life review on him where we would go over some things from his past. He was anxious to talk about it. He and I made an instant connection because he had served as Army Air Force in World War II. And I found out that he had flown air support, as my grandfather had gone in. So we were like, oh, hey, yeah, and so we'd started talking about some things like that because he had gotten to the point where he was talking about a number of things that had happened to him. He had actually fought in 3 wars. He had fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. So he was drawing on a number of things when he would talk. And what came out over time was that there was a lot of trauma and a lot of things that he had buried that came out, and he was beginning to wonder about, and were really, really upsetting him. And it was causing some problems also with his family as well, because he would start talking to them and they really had no clue about some of the things that he was talking about. And yet I remember him when he was talking to me, one of the things he said, he was a belly gunner on a B-25, and he said when German pilots flew close, he said, what they never told you, in flight school, is that you see their faces because they're that close. He said, I saw the faces of the people I shot. So tell me, am I a murderer? And this was something that was really, that was really bothering him. And actually it took us a while of talking about that, of, hey, it was war. You were doing your duty in war. And, if you look at it this way, they were trying to kill you as well. So you were saving your friends, you were saving your comrades. You were not, it was not murder. And then he sprung this one on me. He said, do you know what happens? He said, the bombs are all electrically released. Do you know what happens when that shorts out? I said, no, because, he's talking to me about planes. I don't know nothing about planes, right? He said, the belly gunner has to climb out. And if they don't release, that means they haven't released over the target. So you're flying back. He said, we don't have enough fuel to make it back. So we have to drop the bombs. And the belly gunner has to climb out on the catwalk and manually drop the bombs. Problem is that when you do that, you can drop the bombs anywhere. And he said, I know that I drop bombs on villages. I know that I drop bombs in populated areas. He said, what if I killed a civilian? Am I a murderer now? So you can see his fixation was on like culpability with human life. And I think in many ways it's good that he was thinking along those lines. He was not callous at all about his experiences. But one thing that I think is useful for us to realize, going through a life review, kind of like walking through these things and walking through these times. And a lot of it was just listening and having him get it out. It was good for him to be able to talk and just have someone listen, and he could cry if he wanted. He could go over some of these questions which had been bugging him for a long, long time, and no one had ever talked to him about it. People would say, hey, I don't want to talk about that right now. I don't know. Or they would say, hey, why are you talking about this? But for him, doing a life review really helped him talk some things out and him to actually come to grips with some things. including things that, you know, the question of collateral damage and things of that nature. Now, when I was doing this with him, I had no clue stuff like this was going to come up. I mean, they don't train you for this stuff, right? When people are asking you these questions of morality in this, but that wasn't the point. The point was to get him talking and to get him talking through his experience as you go through. So the point of introspection is really important in the one-on-one contact, and it's one thing that you'll find a lot when working with the elderly. That's one important thing. There is another important thing as we go on. One thing I did want to point out in your book, it does talk about Levinson and Torsten and a few others in regards to some conditions on aging and introspection. But Levinson says that we continue to develop throughout our lives, you know, stages of development, and we need that introspection at the end. I look at it like this, and it may be sort of morbid, but I think it's kind of like the ding on the microwave, right? It's a sort of a resolution when you have the time and you're looking back over things to be able to go through some things and talk some things out. It's one of those things that can bring resolution. And when you are more towards the end of your life than the beginning, and you start reflecting on these things, to bring that resolution is to bring a measure of peace for someone, which is really, really nice. And a lot of it is just listening. Now, the thing about becoming more introspective, can anybody tell me, you know, why you think you become more introspective as you get older?
I would say because you've lived your life, so you're just, that's all you really, a lot of the thing is all you can think about is your experiences and what you've been through.
Yeah, because I think that's part of it. And then there's also a disassociation with, like, I believe, like, current culture. So for example, you get to a point where you hear nobody listens to good music anymore, right? I mean, you might hear those things. And of course, I think that now because, you know, 80s, right? I mean, Flock of Seagulls, right? There you go, Clash, Devo. And so the things that really made an impression on you where you were more formative when you were younger, those things still stay with you. And maybe and most of the time you're not up to step with what maybe current society or current culture, you know, pop culture and things like that are doing. So in becoming more in perspective, you look back. But I also think that there's you know, there's an intrinsic value in it as human beings. As we grow and go through life, particularly in the West, particularly here in America, there's a lot of emphasis placed on stuff, on outward stuff. Am I right? On having you know, having the right house, you know, having kids, having stuff, and people will define themselves by this. Unfortunately, you know, stuff fades, and what are we left with? We're left with ourselves. And so, because by becoming more introspective, we are actually looking at the one thing that's left, you know, us. And so that's why it becomes even more important in dealing with these people to validate their feelings, their reviews. They shouldn't feel guilty that they're looking back on their lives about things. I mean, it's perfectly natural. And so to be able to validate someone and lead them through that really, really helps. Now, the goal in all of this, whether we're talking mental or mental health or physical health, emotional health, the goal is successful aging, because we want to be like Dick Van Dyke, like 96 years old and still be able to dance, right? I don't know if you've seen this video, but this guy's like incredible. Yeah, from Mary Poppins, right? So, Caitlin, you've seen Mary Poppins, haven't you?
Yeah, no,
Yeah, right. Okay. Oh, there we go. There we go. Right. Clean the chimney sweep and stuff. So yeah, the goal is successful aging, and how do we get it? So we talked a little bit about introspection, which is something that is healthy and we do want to encourage, but it also helps to sometimes to facilitate so that someone doesn't, fixate on one thing. But also with successful aging, one of the big things in order to be successful with that is to have a goal, to have a purpose. And research shows that when older people participate in other activities, social activities, whether they're paid or unpaid, whether it's religious activities, volunteer activities, community action, political involvement, it doesn't matter. When they participate in those social activities, they are more healthy. Because not only do they have community, but they also have purpose. I think one great example that I saw firsthand in my own life was when my dad retired after years of working at the same place. When he retired, he sat in a chair for like 4 to 6 months. I don't know actually that he moved that much out of his chair, right? Yeah, it's a comfortable chair, but it's like, come on, Dad, what's going on? And then I don't even know how, he just, he got the opportunity to actually get out, and he worked in like, in trucking and heavy equipment and things like that. So he was no longer up and doing things. But then after about 6 months, he suddenly got the opportunity to haul for the Amish. I mean, you've seen a lot of people that will haul things, for the Amish and back and forth. And I tell you, I had never seen anyone become more alive. You could tell just that purpose, the interaction and everything else, it was fun to him. He had something to do again. And he actually became a lot more active in many other areas of his life. And it all started with that purpose, having some sort of purpose, some sort of goal. So part of successful aging has to do with having a purpose. So working with the older population, that is one thing to look for. Not only facilitating an introspection, but also looking for purpose, goal, involvement, particularly community and social involvement. Now, we talked a lot about individual health and how that can be integrated. But what are some of the issues that the elderly experience in today's society? I'm not talking like medical issues. What are some of the issues, some of the things they might face? Hope you're thinking really hard.
Technology.
Technology. Oh, good one. No one's ever actually said that in a class before. Yes, that's huge. I'm sure people have some stories on that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When mom says, "Hey, did you get my request on the Facebook?" Yeah. Yeah, I did. Okay.
Could one be like debit cards?
Yes.
Would that be, because my grandma, she still refuses to use her debit card. She still writes checks and does cash.
Yep.
She said that is the way it's supposed to be, and that's the way that she's going to use. She does not use her debit card at all.
Hey,
And
bless your grandma. My wife is a debit card user, and I'm like a check writer. So I don't know what it is. I got to see it going. I got to see it going for it actually to hurt, so I don't spend too much, right? I don't know. But yeah, so that's part of it. What are some other issues? So technology, and yeah, this massive shift in the with the economics there. What are some other issues that are experienced? There might be a few issues. Can anybody think of some issues like with work?
I was getting ready to say that. I was thinking,
Yeah, I don't
But-
know about you, but if you look at like some work ethic that's out there,
mhm.
you will find some older people that, I mean, they're some workers.
My grandma
Mhm.
is 81 years old, 82. She'll be 82 this year. She has been through she's had heart attack. She's had open heart surgery. I mean, all of this, and she still works circles around the girls that she works with.
Right. Nothing stopping. However, and we know this, we know this as a fact, that there are many who are extremely capable. However, if they go to apply for a job, yeah, and Brooklyn's nodding her head already. If they go to apply for a job, what could happen?
They wouldn't get hired.
Yeah, wouldn't get hired. Why?
'Cause I don't mean this in a mean way, because they're old.
No, but
They're
that's exactly it. I mean, that's the truth of what happens in society. When there's a lot to be said for experience, and also for the fact that there are some elderly people who not only have the capability, but also that ethic that is so lacking that we see many times. There's so many places that are crying it's so hard to keep workers and things like that. And out of many of these places, you actually don't hear a lot of crying about elderly workers. They're normally easier to keep. And so there is kind of a stigma in society against hiring elderly workers for some positions. And for some of the positions, it's kind of a no-brainer. If somebody's, I don't care if they're 76 or 36, if they're an engineer, I mean, hey, engineer's an engineer, right? Pretty much. But yeah, in many cases, they do have the skills and the drive to continue. So those are some of the things that come up. There's a couple other things as well. We talked about ageism. That's the discrimination against someone due to their age. But another one that comes up is grandparent parenting. Have you ever seen this? Maybe somebody was raised by your grandparents. Maybe spend a lot of time with your grandparents. This is actually a modern phenomenon that is growing and growing and growing. Can anybody guess like how? Well, first of all, was anyone here raised by your grandparents?
Not mine, but my foster parents were grandparents' age.
Okay. Yeah. So nowadays, okay, so we have one in a class of 9. Okay, so the book actually says like 10% of children are out there living with and are raised by their grandparents. That's actually only one study. There are studies that quote that would state up to 25% of children are being raised by their grandparents in some manner, in some significant manner, maybe not exclusively, but in a very significant manner. Yeah. So this alone is something that normally didn't happen in generations before. So this is kind of new. Why do you think that is, that there's more grandparents today parenting than ever?
Because
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's because as a society we've grown stupid.
Okay, we've grown stupid. Someone else.
I think it's because nowadays both parents have to work full-time jobs.
Okay,
And
yeah, that is a
in
good
order,
point.
in order to make it work, for them to pay bills and keep food on the table. So the grandparents do have their grandkids at least 90% of the time. Because I mean, who else would watch the kids?
Right, and if there's shift work going on, it gets even crazier.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so any other reasons?
I don't know. Sometimes could be that the grandparents nowadays were raised to where family was very important, as to where it's not so much now. So the grandparents want to get involved more.
Okay, so there's the desire for family values, seeing the importance of parenting. Okay, Caitlin, got anything for me?
Well, I was actually thinking of like the list that was in the book where it talked about like teen, like increase in teen pregnancies and increase in drug abuse and like foster care, all that stuff, where the grandparents have to step in.
Right. We just came out of talking about children's services and the idea of kinship care, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So yes, these are all reasons. So it ranges from the traumatic, the reasons that Caitlin has listed, all the way to the pragmatic or practical that Tempest was talking about with, hey, you got to do what you got to do in order to make it in today's society, because it is a two-wage earner society. You know, and then in the middle where you have grandparents that see the value in parenting, want to be more involved. So yeah, I mean, it kind of makes for a natural fit. Now, whether or not this is a good thing kind of depends, you know, goes situation to situation. But I think we can all agree that, you know, grandparents cannot successfully parent multiple generations, because at some point in time, guess what? We die. Some point in time, we may you know, may become incapacitated, and also the you know, the limitations to mobility, health issues, a number of those things all get in the way. But it's all part and parcel to the whole thing on grandparents parenting. Now, looking at this, what are some ways that you can think of that human professionals could make a difference in these types of situations? Human service professionals.
Ageism kind of help them with the technology, kind of get them up to par in the technology level to help them maybe find a job somewhere, maybe work from home atmosphere. So age
Okay.
isn't as necessarily an issue.
All right, yeah, because we want to do a little bit more than operate the remote, right? So
For grandparent parenting, with the teen pregnancies and like the drug abuse and the alcohol abuse and things like that, I think we could help those parents with their issues. That way they can eventually get, you know, their kids back, so their parents aren't left to raise the kid. Because some people don't get the help that they need, and their parents are left raising their kids, and you know, so on and so forth, and they never actually get their kids back in their custody.
right, and it's also, it's
parents
kind
are
of
left.
looking at, like, if you're the human service professional and you're working with children, it's casting that wider net and looking at the entire support group.
Mhm.
Hang on, just because, you know, this is the ultimate squirrel going on right now. Brooklyn's got the cute dog and baby going on, so like totally distracting. I take it both those are yours?
Yes.
Oh, the dog with the baby bit. Okay. Yeah, that's a TikTok right there. So there's many ways that we can make a difference, and I think a lot of it is looking at things a wider for a wider net. The other thing that I would throw in there is, as a human service professional, you're like automatically an advocate. Whether you're fighting the stigma against mental health treatment, fighting the stigma against addiction, in the same way, fighting the stigma against ageism, and you know, pointing out that because someone is older, there's actually some pluses there, and maybe looking at the pluses rather than perceived minuses is a good thing to do. For example, I had a neighbor where I used to live. This guy never ceased to amaze me. Of course, he'd be about 78 now. Still does computer and electronic repair for fun on the side, and I'm like, I don't even know the type of things you're talking about, you know. So when it comes to technology, I mean, he's like way past me, and he's just always had that attitude that you know, the attitude that your uncle had, where it's like, hey, you know, I don't care what it is, I may not be training this, but I'm just going to figure it out. He's that type of person, and that has never left him. And so he's just become known as like the local, hey, take your computer to him. Hey, take any electronic to him. Just because he's had that attitude of, I'm going to figure it out. And it stayed with him for well over 50 years. So there's all sorts of people that are like that in the world. One thing that and also bring up is that when it comes to dealing with the elderly, there are some special concerns to remember. Some of these will be brought up in your book, but the multicultural concerns are a big thing because here in the West, age is not valued as much as it is in other parts of the country. And since America is, or not other parts of the country, I'm sorry, other parts of the world. And since America is a melting pot and we do run into many different cultures, there will be people that you deal with that will deal with age differently. Particularly things like Native American cultures, that's completely different. Age is respected, and actually in a lot of group cultures and a lot of Eastern cultures, that is the case, where the elderly are afforded some more respect, some more reverence. And so these things are some good things to know. So when you get to a place, if you move from a place or you're starting to deal with a population, it always, always, always pays to do just a little bit of research on some of the on what the demographic makeup is, and then to learn a little bit. I mean, this is something you can do on Google, in a day, but it'll make you much more conversant and much more effective when you come in contact with some different cultures. Another thing is, as I mentioned with my in the story about my friend before, with veterans, one thing I've noticed is that there are some who will they will revisit a lot of the trauma that they had when they were young. I've talked to several elderly vets who seem very much fixated on things that happened during their time in the military, and so they might revisit some of those, and these can be augmented by things like dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that. So that's why the listening and the being conversant with the introspection can really help. These are a couple of the special concerns that you might find in dealing with the elderly. But all in all, like I said, it's pretty much the one area that is going to grow huge over the next 10 years. So does anyone have any questions? What's your dog's name, Brooke?
Koozie.
What is it?
Koozie.
Uzi.
Koozie.
Koozie. Koozie. As in jacuzzi, but just okay. And the little one?
His name's Crew.
Crew. Okay. All right, I'll have to get our dog up here sometime. We have a couple. And our cat, the one with 3 legs, remember?
Aw.
3 pets, 11 legs, right?
I got 3 pets. I got 3 cats and a dog.
Yeah,
so.
she had her stitches out yesterday, so it was a traumatic moment for my daughter, but she's doing well. So, all right, well, that's all I have so far as material. I do want to devote some time to answer some specific questions about the literature review to those of you who might have some, and kind of keep it specific to your situation. I'll go ahead and stop recording, but if this is something where, if this is a time where you want to hop off, that's fine. Or if you want to stay and ask a few questions or touch a little bit more on the literature review, you can do that as well. The exam study guide will be out. I'll have it out by noon today, an announcement, and you can start checking that out. So remember, the literature review will be due on the 13th, and we agreed the exam on the 14th.